All right, today we're diving into something called Apache NiFi. It's this fantastic tool that helps us get a handle on the wild, chaotic flow of information that pretty much powers our entire world. I mean, really think about it for a second. In any big organization, data is just constantly zipping around, from servers to databases, from apps to analytics tools. But what's happening in that space in between? How does data actually get from point A to point B without getting lost, or worse, totally scrambled along the way? Well, that question right there, that challenge, it brings us to our first big idea. How do we go about taming what you could call data chaos? Look, when you've got dozens, maybe even hundreds of different systems all trying to talk to each other, you end up with this ridiculously complex web of connections. It's fragile, it's a nightmare to monitor, and it's nearly impossible to figure out what broke when something goes wrong. This right here, this is the data chaos so many companies are wrestling with every single day. So what's the answer? How do you possibly bring order to all that chaos? Well, you build a factory, a digital data factory. At its heart, Apache NiFi is a system for automating how data moves between places. But here's the thing, it's not just some simple pipe. The key idea here is something called flow-based programming. What that really means is you can visually design, control, and watch how your data moves, almost like you're a factory manager looking out over the entire assembly line. And that's exactly the metaphor we're going to stick with. Just picture it, a huge factory where raw data comes in one door, it travels along all these conveyor belts, gets worked on by different machines, and then comes out the other side as a perfect finished product. NiFi? Well, NiFi is that factory. Okay, so to really get a feel for our factory, we need to meet the crew and check out the machinery. Let's break down the most important parts. First up, we've got the flow file. The best way to think of these? They're the packages, the raw materials moving through the factory. Every single piece of data that enters NiFi gets wrapped up in a flow file. And each one has two parts: the content, which is the actual data itself, the good stuff, and the attributes, which are kind of like the shipping labels on the package. It's the data about the data, like its file name, a unique ID, or where it came from. Next, meet the processors. These are your workers, your machines on the assembly line. Every processor has one very specific job. One might be responsible for grabbing data from a server, another one might compress it, and a third could look inside the package to decide where it needs to go next. These are the guys doing all the heavy lifting. So how do all these packages get from one worker to the next? They travel on connections, which are basically the factory's conveyor belts. They link all the processors together, and they also act as a buffer, holding the packages in a line until the next machine is ready. This is super important because it creates something called back pressure, which stops any part of the line from getting overwhelmed and makes sure no data ever gets dropped. And of course, as our factory grows, we've got to keep it organized, right? That's where process groups come in. Just think of them as different departments in the factory. You could have an intake department or a quality control department, and each one would have its own set of workers and conveyor belts. It just keeps the whole operation looking clean and easy to understand. So we've met the whole team. But how do we actually put them to work? How do we build that assembly line? And this is where NiFi's magic really shines. See, you don't build a data flow by writing a bunch of complicated code. Nope. You build it by visually putting your factory together. You literally drag and drop your components, your workers and conveyor belts, onto a digital canvas. You tell each one what its job is, and then you just connect the dots to create your assembly line. It's that simple. You know, this whole approach is completely by design. The idea is to empower someone, often called a data flow manager, to build and manage these incredibly powerful data pipelines just by looking at them, without needing a degree in computer science. So when you open up NiFi, what you're really looking at is your factory floor. You've got your toolbar, that's your toolkit full of workers and machines. You've got the canvas, that's the actual floor space where you build everything. And then you have the status bar, which is like the big control panel in the supervisor's office, giving you a live dashboard of the health of the entire operation. Okay, so building the factory is one thing, but managing it day to day, that's a whole other ballgame. So let's step into the supervisor's office and see how NiFi gives you total control and visibility. This right here, this is NiFi's superpower. It's called data provenance. Think of it as the most amazing high-tech tracking system you've ever seen for every single package in your factory. At any moment, you can look at any piece of data and see its entire life story. I mean everything. Where it came from, every single machine that touched it, every little change that was made to it, and exactly where it ended up. For things like compliance, debugging, or auditing, this is an absolute game changer. And this just lays it all out, doesn't it? We go from the total chaos of having zero visibility to having a crystal clear visual flow. We go from painful hours-long debugging sessions to full data provenance, from worrying about losing data to having guaranteed delivery. You can even tune the whole system to prioritize either low latency, getting data through super fast, or high throughput, which is all about processing massive amounts of data as efficiently as possible. So what's the bottom line here? It means you are firmly in the driver's seat. You get to visually design and control your data pipelines, and you get feedback in real time. You have a completely bulletproof audit trail for every single thing that happens. And you can fine-tune the entire system to perfectly meet the needs of your data, balancing speed with reliability. Look, once you have the keys to the digital data factory, you can finally stop just reacting to data problems. You can start proactively designing these elegant, transparent solutions. So the only real question left is, what data chaos are you going to tame first?